Welcome to VENKANNA ENGLISHGURU. We are talking about Victorian period. As a part of Victorian period, today we are going to talk about pen names or pseudonyms of different writers and important poetic techniques introduced by Victorian writers, and we'll start authors. Okay? And thank you all for subscribing our channel, and it's been for more than 500 within 15 days. We were able to have more than 500 subscribers. Thank you. It's only because of your support. I believe within July we'll cross 1000. Thank you. Next, what are the important pen names? What are the important pen names of writers during Victorian period? You can see this is very important. Several times in the history of DSC, in the history of Gurukula TGT PGT, these were asked. So George Eliot is actually the pen name which is also called pseudonym. Spelling, remember, pseudonym. P silent. Srirangam Srinivasarao, Sinare, Dr. Sri Narayan Reddy, like that. Some of the writers during Victorian period, they had a lot and pen names. George Eliot is a pen name of Mary Ann Evans, and Charles Dickens' pen name Bose, and he was called Moses from his childhood. This Moses became Bose. Next, Charlotte Bronte, Currer Bell, Emily Bronte, Alice Bell, Anne Bronte, Alice Bell. Elia, as you know, Elia is a pen name of Charles Lamb. Lady of Christ, this is a popular pen name of John Milton. And Sage of Highgate, this is the pen name of S.T. Coleridge. George Orwell, as you know, the author of Animal Farm. Eric Arthur Blade, this is the original name, but George Orwell and where he used to have. These are, and when we talk about these four writers, George Eliot, Anne Bronte, and Emily Bronte, Charlotte Bronte, not Elia, these four writers, they had male pseudonyms, male pen names, because the conditions did not support these female writers to write literature. Hence, they had to change their names as part of this male George, Ellis, Alice, and Currer, so that their literature was read by common people, read by men of the sophisticated patriarchal men of the time. Hence, they changed their names and they were able to write literature and became popular. So, some of the popular pen names and the writers. Next, we will be talking about a few poetic techniques. What are the important poetic techniques that are proposed by writers during this period? So, some of the popular poetic techniques we need to understand is, first, the popular technique that is suggested by Matthew Arnold is touchstone method. Touchstone method. First, I will give you some little bit history with regard to touchstone. Touchstone, this is actually a character taken from the play As You Like It. In As You Like It, it's a play composed by Shakespeare, you know. And in this, one of the humorous characters, Touchstone. This is taken by Matthew Arnold. Next. What does it mean by touchstone? According to Matthew Arnold, touchstone, usually in general, touchstone refers to, it's an alley which is used to rub. For example, if there is a gold item and one specific kind of thing that which we can use to rub the gold, whether it is pure or not, pure gold or not gold or some other metal, we can identify with that alley. That is touchstone in general. But what does it mean by touchstone according to Matthew Arnold? Touchstone refers to a stanza of words line. It's a poem. It's a stanza. It's a stanza of words line. It's a words. It's a poem of minimum 1, maximum 4 lines. Minimum 1, maximum 4 lines of stanza. Okay. And these stanzas, these touchstones are usually taken from the greatest writers. Not everybody, greatest writers, greatest poets, I can say, according to Matthew Arnold. and this touchstone includes minimum 1 line, maximum 4 lines. Minimum 1 line, maximum 4 lines. And these touchstones are usually taken from the greatest writers. According to Matthew Arnold, the greatest writers were, I have a code for you, HDSM. H. Homer, D. Dante, S. Shakespeare, M. Milton. Remember, what is the code? According to Matthew Arnold, the greatest poets were HDSM, Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, Milton. And from these writers, from these poets, he collected 11 touchstones, 11 poems, 11 stanzas. These stanzas are considered to be touchstones. So, these 11, again we have a code for that, 3323. Okay, from Homer 3 stanzas, 3 touchstones, from Dante 3, Shakespeare 2 and Milton 3. So how many? 11, 3, 3, 2, 3. 9 plus 2, 11. This is, and based on these stanzas, Matthew Arnold will be able to evaluate the poetry that is composed by other writers. For example, he wanted to make comment on Matthew Arnold or Robert Browning, Alfred Tennyson, and he uses these models from the greatest writers and evaluate the poetry composed by Robert Browning or Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and he says, according to Homer, according to Shakespeare, according to Dante, this is not the greatest poetry, this is the ordinary poetry, and he rejects. This is the method. This method which we can say touchstone method. My friends, several times in the history of UGC NET, AP set or TS set or JL DL examination, there is a bit. Touchstones are usually taken from any poet, all poets, greatest poets or greatest novelist. Answer, greatest poets. According to Matthew Arnold, the greatest poets are, who of the following is not the greatest poets according to Matthew Arnold as part of touchstone method? You need to remember this code, HDSM, Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, Milton. How many touchstones were produced by Dante? 11. How many from Homer? How many from Dante? How many from Shakespeare? How many from Milton? All these were popular questions today in the history of NET examination, TET or set examination or JLDL examinations, my friends. Very important. So this is touchstone. I think you understood. Next, Philistinism. Second important technique that is proposed by Matthew Arnold is Philistinism. One of the major important critics in English literature is Matthew Arnold. Function of criticism, study of poetry, essays on criticism, popular works by Matthew Arnold. Philistinism. What does it mean by Philistinism? Re-evaluation of works of art. So, re-evaluating works of literature. For example, somebody during degree examinations, during any examinations after UG, one question paper is evaluated by minimum 3 examiners, 2 assistant examiners and 1 chief examiner, CE, AE, usually. So, what does this AE do? What does the CE do? Again, re-evaluates whether the AE and did properly or not. That is, so here Philistinism, which means somebody evaluates the works of literature and same work of literature which is evaluated by somebody else. This process, according to Matthew Arnold, which is called Philistinism. According to Matthew Arnold, Philistinism should be conducted in order to find out the quality of a good work, good art. Next, culture. Another important, Culture and Anarchy, another important essay composed by Matthew Arnold, where he talks about, where he coined the term culture. Next, In Stress, Inscape, Sprung Rhythm and Curtle Sonnet. So, Inscape, I will tell you this definition. J.M. Hopkins, as you know, he gave a lot of priority for, like George Herbert. George Herbert, he was a devotional poet who gave a lot of priority for God, Almighty, Jesus. And he wrote a lot of poetry in praise of Lord Almighty. Inscape, what does it mean by inscape? The indwelling presence of God in nature. The indwelling presence of God in nature. God lives in nature. God stays in nature. If you respect nature, indirectly you are respecting God. If you pray to nature, you will be able to pray to God. That is the idea suggested by Jim Hopkins in terms of, he composed a wonderful collections of lyrics, the Wreck of Deutschland. The Wreck of Deutschland, where he talks about, where he employs all these techniques. Next, in stress, one type of meter. Next, sprung rhythm. As part of meter, we will have iambic, anapaestic, trochee, dactylic. These are different foot like and that you study as part of your Telugu, Upamalankaram, Utpalamala, Champakmala, Shardulam, Mattevam, Ataveladi, Thetagiti, like you study. Sprung rhythm, which means the process of employing one words line in every line of words. For example, the poet uses iambic in one words line, trochee in another words line, dactylic in another words line, and pyric in another words line. The process of composing a poem in this way, which we can say sprung rhythm. Next, cuttle sonnet, very important one. My friends, sonnets are usually broadly composed in two ways, in two categories: English sonnet, Italian sonnet. English sonnet, which is popularized by Shakespeare, hence it is called Shakespearean sonnet. Italian sonnet, which was popularized by Petrarch, Francisco Petrarch, hence it is called Petrarchan sonnet. What is Petrarchan sonnet? A sonnet that is divided into two parts, octava, sestet. Sonnet refers to a poem that is composed in 14 lines, you know. Okay, sonnet is composed in 14 lines. Italian sonnet, two parts, octava, 8 lines, sestet, 6 lines. English sonnet, a sonnet that is composed in 3 quatrains and 1 couplet, English sonnet. Quatrain, stanza 4 lines, couplet, a stanza of 2 lines. This is everybody knows. But according to J.M. Hopkins, curtle, cut short, curtle, which means cut short. A sonnet is composed in 10 and a half or 11 lines is called cuttle sonnet. What is cuttle sonnet? Cuttle sonnet refers to a sonnet that is composed in 10 and a half or 11 lines. So according to J.M. Hopkins, a sonnet can be composed in 10 and a half lines or 11 lines. That's it. This is cuttle sonnet. Very simple bits, my friends. Next, another important technique, that is techniques that are introduced into English literature during this period, 16-line sonnet. Usually sonnets are composed in 14 lines. According to J.M. Hopkins, 10 and a half lines. But according to George Meredith and his father-in-law was Thomas Love Peacock. This Thomas Love Peacock was a revolutionary writer we discussed as part of Romantic period. And this Thomas Love Peacock, he was a revolutionary writer, atheist, and had a lot of close association with P.B. Shelley and Leigh Hunt, Thomas Jefferson Hawke. All these were very revolutionary writers. And he had a daughter who imbibed all the qualities of Thomas Love Peacock. And she also became a revolutionary kind of figure. And this revolutionary figure fell in love with George Meredith. He also liked, because as she was beautiful, and he liked her. And what happened? And they had a wonderful love affair between the two. And they got married. But after marriage, and the marriage, and they had a lot of problems, and there was destruction, and marriage became a failure. And George Meredith, he was so sensitive, not as open as the daughter of Thomas Love Peacock, and he wanted to convey his anger, anguish he wanted to convey to the people who were his close associatives that he was not happy with his marriage life, and he wanted to say that his marriage was a failure. But how can he convey that? He invented this 16-line sonnet, and he composed Modern Love. Modern Love in 1856. This includes 50 16-line sonnets, And why did he use 16-line sonnet? We can understand the way when you read those poems. He created this to talk about his inner feelings, his inner anguish towards his love, towards his marriage, towards his failure in terms of marriage. That's what. So 16-line sonnet was introduced into English literature by George Meredith. Enough. Next, dramatic monologue. Very important, my friends. Dramatic monologue, dramatic lyric, dramatic words, monologue, soliloquy. These are the common repeated bits as part of examinations. In the exam, you will get bits based on this. Dramatic monologue. The dramatic monologue is a type of poem in which a speaker who is not the poet speaks and interacts with one or more other people, one or more other listeners or audience. And in the process of interaction, this is the kind of interaction, and one to many people, one to the other people, but the listener's audience do not give any reply. That is this poem, and here the focus of the poem is all about self and revelation of the speaker. And the speaker is not going to be the poet. There is no connection at all. The speaker is different and the writer is different in this. This type of poem first invented into English literature by Robert Browning. My Last Duchess, Andrew Del Soto, and Abbot Wagner, and The Last Trade Together. Okay, all the Fra Lippo Lippi, all these are best examples for dramatic monologues. And The Sun Rising by John Donne, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot, best examples for dramatic monologues. So, and we will also have a wonderful poem, dramatic monologue, The Earthen Goblet. The Earthen Goblet, a popular poem, and that is also a wonderful dramatic monologue. So, this dramatic monologue which is popularized by Robert Browning. Wessex poems. Wessex, it's a popular place in London, and based on this place, Thomas Hardy composed all his poems, all his novels. Hence, his novels are called regional novels, his poems are called regional poems. Okay, Wessex novels are associated with, for example, Malgudi, it's a place that is popularly used by R.K. Narayanan. Hence, all the novels of R.K. Narayanan, regional novels. Wessex and regional novels. Art for art's sake. Art is for art's sake, very important. Art is for humanity's sake, neoclassical. Art is for the poet's sake, romantic. Art is for art's sake, new critics. Or art is for art's sake, it's a wonderful slogan given by Walter Pater. Several times this was asked, my friends. Next, social comedies. Social comedies. Social comedy refers to a type of comedy that is composed by the writer to make a commentary on the social and political conditions of the time, with humor, with ridicule, with irony, all those weapons. Example, the importance of being honest, the picture of the Dorian Gray, and Salome. And there are plenty of what were the major reasons for creating characters of heterosexual and homosexual characters, lesbians, gay kind of characters in his novels, because he wanted to convey to the society something. That is social comedy. Jingoism, Rudyard Kipling, that is, not this. We will talk about life force, G.B. Shaw. Life force, the confidence of an individual, the inner hidden strength of an individual. According to G.B. Shaw, your fate is not going to make difference. Your life force is going to make difference. Once you read the characters, once you read the central characters of any play that is composed, for example, St. John, and she gives a lot of priority for life force. She believed that a 19-year young girl and fights against the British army. 19 years young French girl fights against that, and she became saint. She was awarded sainthood, and she became the child of Jesus, child of Lord Almighty. It's only because of her quality of life force, which means because there is a purpose for the creation of this life by the God Almighty, and you need to recognize that, and then your life will be fulfilled. That is the idea of life force. And it is not that your life or your difficulty or your problem that are going to change your fate. It is your willpower, it is your self-confidence, it's your life force which will change your fate, which will create an identity in the world. This is the major motto of all characters, create and produced in the place of J.B. Shaw. So, life force, because he was the only writer. He had to die at the age of 36, but he didn't. At the age of 16, he wasn't. And at the age of 40, he wasn't. Because he says by the end, and he died at the age of 97, it's only because of physical problems. That's what he says. He lived for more than 96, 97 years only because of his life force, that he says. Our life force is very important. Our confidence is very important. Our self-reliance is very important. Our inner potentiality is very important. And the purpose of recognizing our identity, our purpose to this world is very important, which will create not your fate, not your the concept that are written on your arm or your fate. That is what the idea said by J.B. Shaw. These are some poetic techniques, and don't try to forget the thing. Okay. Next. We'll talk about one writer. Okay, so we are talking about Victorian writers, and the first writer that we are talking about is Robert Browning. Robert Browning, as part of this Victorian period where we need to talk about 8 writers, and first writer is Robert Browning, and his age 1812, and his age 1812 and 1889. He was a popular English poet, playwright. Next, he is popular for dramatic words and dramatic monologue. Very important one. Who is a popular writer of dramatic monologue? Robert Browning. And next, he was born in Walworth and Surrey, South London, and his parents, Sarah Anna and Robert Browning. One interesting feature of Robert Browning is his father name is Robert Browning, his name is Robert Browning, his son name is Robert Browning. Okay, remember, Robert Browning's father Robert Browning, his name Robert Browning, and his son's name is Robert Browning, remember. Next, his father was a well-paid clerk. He was a clerk, and his mother was the daughter of a German ship owner. Okay. The poetic qualities. By 12, Browning had written a book of poetry. At the age of 12 only, he was able to write a book of poetry, but he was not able to publish that due to other reasons. By 14, he became a polyglot. He was able to speak English, French, Italian, German, and Latin. Remember. So, he was fluent in French, Greek, Italian, Latin, apart from English. Next, became a great admirer of romantic poet, specifically Shelley, and his first poem, Pauline, which is a homage to Shelley. And his first poem that is dedicated to Shelley, it's a kind of homage. And following the precedents of Shelley, he adapted Shelley as an inspiration, as a model, hence he became a vegetarian. He became an atheist, he became a vegetarian. He wanted to be a revolutionary writer, but later, after a couple of years, after falling in love with Elizabeth Barrett Browning, he left all this. He was popular for the length and difficult poem, The Ring and the Book, very popular epic. This epic is composed in not less than 20,000 lines. Okay, 20,000 lines. The longest epic in English literature in this. Next, you can also observe in 1845 he visited Elizabeth Barrett Browning, where they had a close friendship, close association, mutual liking. Next, you can say private marriage, because her father was angry and they were rich, and she was 7 years elder. 7 years elder to Robert Browning, and she was so popular, tycoon. She was the daughter of a wonderful businessman, and his father didn't like, hence they eloped to Italy. Okay, and sort of elopement Usually English writers in Telangana, people when they love each other, they elope to either Bombay or Surat or somewhere like that. These people usually elope to what? Where? Next, Italy. Very important one. And he usually calls this Italy my university, and he commonly uses this in all. This becomes a feature in all his works. Next, he was regarded as sage. The bad luck with regard to Robert Browning was, after having lived after marriage for 7 years, Elizabeth Barrett Browning died by giving birth to a son. And they enjoyed marital life for just 7 years. Hence, he never married. Most of the English writers, after the death of their partners, they married, but Robert Browning didn't. That is a greatness. Hence, he became a philosopher, sage, usually, like R.K. Narayanan also. And he lost his wife when he was below 40. R.K. Narayanan, he lost his wife when he was below 40, when she was just hardly 33, 34. She passed away, and he never married in his life. He became a sage, philosopher. Next, through his poetry, and he was a philosophical poet, because he talks about philosophy of love, philosophy of religion, philosophy of society, philosophy of different religions, the philosophies in terms of other aspects. And through his poetry, had made contributed to his Victorian social and political discourse. He spoke about social issues, and political discussions through his poetry. The poem Caliban upon Satabus, and this is a comment on theory of evolution proposed by Charles Darwin in 1859. He didn't like this, hence he made comment through Caliban and Satabus. Next, the remainder of Browning's life was occupied with journeys between England and France and Italy. Why? He eloped to Italy because he had a lot of fear that Elizabeth Barrett Browning's father may attack this couple. Hence they eloped, and in secret he used to come, because to have bread and butter, he had to come, he had to write literature, he had to write some poetry, he had to sell. That is possible only in London. Hence he used to come in secret time, and hence he kept Elizabeth Barrett Browning in Italy till her death, because she died in Florence. See, his wife died at Florence. Okay, next, by leaving one son named Robert Browning. The collection Dramatic Persona and his epic poem The Ring and the Book. Epic, we need to understand, my friends, long book that is composed in a grand style about a grand theme. We can say the Bible, the Gita, the Ramayana, the Quran, all those are epics. Browning's most esteemed poems include Fra Lippo Lippi, Andrea del Sarto, and My Last Ride Together, and Populier's Lover, the Piper of Hamelin, very important one, My Last Duchess, Andrea del Sarto, which becomes a part of Telangana Gurukula jail DL examination syllabus, this Andrea del Sarto. Andrea del Sarto was a popular 14th century Italian poet, along with Raphael, Michelangelo, Petrarch, Dante. All those were contemporaries of Andrea del Sarto. Very interesting. That is also best example for dramatic monologue, where his lover leaves him, as he was a popular painter. He paints and he sells his work, and he was not able to paint anything, and she was attracted to somebody else. She says, I am not going to live with you because you are not earning anything. I am planning to go away with another poet or another king, because if you are not able to at least earn $200, like, I will definitely leave you, I will run away with somebody. That is a statement that is made by the beloved of Andrea del Sarto. He was in tension. He goes on painting and attracting, but she lives by the end of the poem. A very interesting love story. You need to read that. Next, in March 1833, the first collection of poem, Pauline, subtitle A Fragment of Confession. This is written by Robert Browning, and it's a homage to Shelley. The long poem Pauline brought to the attention of this attracted Dante Gabriel Rossetti and other pre-Raphaelite writers. Paracelsus, another poem, was praised by Wordsworth and Dickens, and this deals with the problems of confronting intellectual trying to find his role in society. Who? The poet himself in this. In 1838 he visited Italy, looking back, and Sordello where he composed, and like this Sordello and some of the poems that are composed by Robert Browning, where he uses history and historical myths as the basis for writing this. He uses 14th century Italian history in order to write Sordello, and what Dante used in terms of Divine Comedy, where he uses in this. Next, in 1841 and 46, Bells and Pomegranates, very wonderful collection of a series of 8 pamphlets where he wanted to convey his ideas. Bells and Pomegranates, which is composed in 8 series. Bells and Pomegranates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 volumes, my friends. Another important text, in Florence in 1853, Browning worked on the poems of men and women, another important poem. And in 1868, after 5 years of work, he completed and published Blank Verse poem. Blank words, in short I will tell you, blank words means composed in iambic foot, pentameter lines, no rhyme scheme. Any blank verse poem. Blank verse is a concept, it's a style of writing literature which is introduced into English literature by Sir Thomas Batt. And this usually follows iambic foot, pentameter lines, no rhyme scheme. Remember, blank verse poem. Usually greatest epics are composed in blank verse. Next, it's a blank verse poem, A Ring and the Book. Blank verse poem which is nothing but an epic, which we can say. Based on this, Men and The Ring and the Book, it's all about the murder case from 1690s Rome in 12 volumes. Usual epics are composed in 12 volumes. And dramatic monologues. And this is composed in not less than 20,000 lines. Next, The Ring and the Book was his most ambitious project. This is also called Tour de Force. This is Italian in terms. The greatest poem. In 1887, Browning produced the majority of his later years, paralleling with certain and people of importance in their day. His last volume, Hustle and Dough, last collection of poetry composed by Robert Browning, Hustle and Dough. Okay, the only epic, The Ring and the Book, and the series of pamphlets and the Bells and Pomegranates. First poem, Pauline. Like that, you need to remember. Next, what are the major important works composed by Robert Browning? And you can see. Next, Pauline, Paracelsus, Strafford, Sordello, Bells and Pomegranates, Volume 1. Okay, next, you need to give priority for this. My Last Duchess. My Last Duchess, which is actually published in the form of in dramatic lyrics, published in 1842. There may be a bit. My Last Duchess is composed by Robert Browning, taken from dramatic lyrics, published in 1842. These 3 points you just remembered. My Last Duchess, it's an example for dramatic monologue. A wonderful poem. We'll talk about short summary at the end. And some of the other poems which are not required. Next, Bells and Pomegranates, Volume 3, Volume 4, 5, 6 and 7. Next, you can see some of general issues. Next, some of the other poems which include Bells and Pomegranates, 8 volumes. 8 volumes you can see. And very important thing is Men and Women, composed in 1855. And Andrea Del Sarto, very important one. If there are any students who are writing Gurukula JL or DL or TSPSC JL or DL in future, this is a part of that syllabus. Andrea Del Sarto, which is taken from Men and Women, published in 1855. These 3 parts you can remember. Fra Lippo popular. The Last Ride Together. Last Ride Together, very important poem which is prescribed for other examinations, and some of the other poems. Next, very important one, dramatic persona. Caliban upon Setebos, another Rabbi Ben Ezra, and Up to Wagla, important poems. Dramatic persona, Caliban upon Setebos, Rabbi Ben Ezra, about Wagler, and The Ring and the Book, very important epic composed by Robert Browning. Next, one of the major important things that we need to understand, Robert Browning was a popular poet, popular dramatist. He was not an essayist or a prose writer, but he experimented with one prose essay, that is essay on Shelley, only essay that is composed by Robert Browning in his life. Next, what are the styles? What is the style of writing literature by Robert Browning? Next, his poems are known for irony. See, a very important thing is irony, characterization, social commentary, political commentary. He writes poetry to make comment on the society. Next, settings, historical settings. For example, Ring and the Book, 1690s murder. And Sordello, 14th century Italian literature. Like, he uses historical settings and the use of vocabulary, morphological, syntactical patterns. And most of the characters, speakers in his poems are artists, like musicians, painters. Example of My Last Duchess, Duke of Ferrara, Andrew Del Sarto, the painter Andrew Del Sarto. About Wagler, Fra Lippi, and The Last Day Together, The Greatest Lover. Next, his reputation took more than a decade, because as he was greatly influenced by Shelley and he imitated Shelley for more than a decade, people were able to identify him with Shelley. Next, and he is popular for dramatic monologues, He uses a lot of soliloquies, rationalizing. Next, yes, very important one. These are the two important writers, J.M. Hopkins, George Santayana. These are the two important critics who criticized Robert Browning through different essays. And he said, George Santayana, who said, poetry of barbarism. You wrote a lot of poetry that is barbaric, uncivilized kind of poetry that was composed by you. It's a statement made by George Santayana against Robert Browning. But this is taken away by Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman, he said, their embrace of irrationality. They did not have any irrationality, hence they made comment, forget about and continue. This is the supporting statement made by Walt Whitman to Robert Browning. Next, his first work of any importance, Pollen, and influence of Shelley. Second, Paracelsus, the story of heroes' unquenchable thirst for the breadth of knowledge. Paracelsus, it's all about the unquenchable thirst for knowledge by the writer, and where he makes a popular statement in this: a life without love must be failure. In your life, you must be loved by someone. If there is no love in your life is useless. See what a wonderful philosophy of love that he says. Love, any love that should be received by somebody. Love cannot be only the partner's love. Love from students, love from people, love from followers, love from the subject experts, love from syllables and siblings, or maybe anything. So, a life without love must be failure. So, a life with love, it's a success, according to Robert Browning. And God is working all things to an end beyond human divining. Another important dialogue. Next, Strafford, another play where he talks about to decide the relationship between art and life. Art and life. Whether art is very important in our life or life is very important in our life. And what is the connection between these two, he talks about. Next, his method to take not required. Next, dramatic lyrics, dramatic romances, and these dramatic lyrics which were addressed to Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and some of the popular poems, these poems are composed in blank words. Most of his poems are composed in blank words. Next, The Ring and the Book, we have gone through this text, and the heroine Pompilia. The Ring and the Book is the story of the murder of young wife Pompilia by her worthless husband in the year 1690s. He kills his wife Pompilia, and due to jealousy and some kind of tension and over feelings towards her. Next, what is the style that he actually used in his writings? His choice of subject is very important, and his philosophical poems, most of his poems deal with his philosophy, and his first concern was with the human soul. Most of the philosophers, they give priority for human soul. Self-realization becomes an important aspect according to these writers. Next, his characters are not often completely objective. Not completely objective, they are sometimes subjective. They show certain feelings, personal feelings. Next, here we are talking about short summaries. Short summaries of the Last Ride Together. Last Ride Together, it's actually a kind of interpersonal. It's a kind of interpersonal dialogue between the lover and the beloved. And the lover, the beloved says, "I am not going to stay with you. I want to go away from you." And the beloved says, "Okay, you can go, but you can come with me for the last time. We'll walk together. That is going to be the last ride together. Okay, I can leave you by evening, but we'll have a ride together. Okay, if after the ride you can leave permanently, I don't have any issues. Let me feel all our feelings that we had in our love." That is a popular story. This talks about, and philosophy is love. It's an important part of philosophy of life. There is a comparison between philosophy of life, philosophy of love, according to Robert Browning, and where he makes emotions of life finest love poetry. Okay, next, and it's a love poem, popular love poem, philosophy of love, which you can understand from this. Next, My Last Duchess. My Last Duchess, again, you see the Duke of Ferrara, the speaker, he speaks and interacts with an emissary. He says he was able to kill his wife because she laughs with him, with soldiers, with other people. She was not able to only laugh with the poet, with the speaker himself. Hence, out of jealousy, he kills her and he becomes ready for another marriage. And what was the major reason behind getting remarried? Hence, he talks about. Okay, that is what the story of this. Out of jealousy, he kills her and planning for getting remarried. Okay, this is what with regard to Robert Browning, one writer. I think it's for okay and for today, and we'll be talking about 2 or 3 writers maybe tomorrow. If there is any chance, classes may be from 7 to 8 or 6:30 to 7:30 like I will be conducting. You should adjust with that. Not before 6 I may not conduct. After 6 usually we'll have classes from 6 to 7. If there is no possibility, we'll have classes from 7 to 8 or 6:30 to 7:30 like that. You should also have plans like that. Okay, right then we'll meet tomorrow, and have some patience for question papers, and we'll be planning everything. Everything is taking some time. Okay, right then. Amma.